You know what that music means? It's Friday. It's around 8:30 on a Friday, and it's time for Free Speech Fridays. A half hour at the end of the week where I get a couple of free-speaking New Zealanders and we talk about the issues of the week and have a good natter. I am like a thorn between two roses today. I am joined by my debating compadre from Tuesday night from the anti-gay Nazi rally that was the charity debate at HQ in Auckland on Tuesday night. National MP for Papakura, Judith Collins. Judith, welcome. Lovely to talk to you again.
Hello, Sean, and hello, Brooke.
And yes, also with us, someone who attended the Nazi rally that Simon Wilson went to, but did not participate, Brooke van Velden. Brooke, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, Sean. How are you?
Very good. I'm amazed how well you disguised your complete contempt and disgust for that menu at HQ on.
To be honest, I didn't actually see any menu while I was there.
No, there was a lot.
That's because I had one drink.
That's because all the white supremacists were drinking so much and swearing, and we didn't get time. Now, Brooke, I want to ask you...
All the menus were taken away from me for everyone else.
Brooke, I have to ask you, you went along, and look, you're running for Tamaki, and I understand the campaign's going well, so you go along to events like that. It's about profile. Was it the evil hate fest that Simon Wilson reported it to be?
No, it wasn't. Look, I spend a lot of time just walking around talking to members of the public who turned up. And everyone was there because they wanted to have a good time. They wanted to have some drinks out at the pub with their mates.
Yeah.
They wanted to support flood victims, which was why I was there as well.
Yeah.
And they thought, oh, well, maybe we'll get a little bit of a political debate and argy-bargy out of it too. Everyone there was just there for a good time midweek.
Do you think Simon Wilson felt a little bit vulnerable, which is why he wrote the piece the next day, Brooke?
Well, look, sitting there, it kind of looked like he was enjoying the whole event himself.
Yeah.
I don't want to speak for Simon or speak for anybody, but on the whole, I think everyone just acknowledged this was a bit of light-hearted humour.
Yeah.
Do you
at some think point, his report? Do you think his report reflected that?
Oh, look, I only skim-read what he ended up writing. I don't tend to take too much notice of his articles, to be honest. But, look, I think you've got to just say, look, it's okay for people to have some fun in their lives.
Yeah.
Not everything people say has to be...
And at least everyone paid their bill.
serious.
There were no runners. There were no runners as far as I know.
That's true, but most importantly, people actually ended up giving some money to charity that will go into the hands of people who were victims of the floods. And we've got to remember that at the end of the day. This was a fundraiser that was supposed to help other members of the community. If that means it's a political debate and some funds going for specific dinners and things, then that's a good outcome.
Yeah. Well, Judith, he dobbed you and Simon Wilson, didn't he? About your little light-hearted comment,
Well, why not? I mean, I actually think that Simon was enjoying himself.
Yeah.
I mean, he was laughing along and scribbling notes as he was laughing. So I thought he was enjoying it, and I think he liked being the butt of several jokes. I don't think I said mean about him, but because I was too busy focusing on, I don't know, Guy
on
Williams.
our team winning, actually, Judith. That's the other thing that wasn't reported.
No, and we won, and he said it was just, wasn't sure who won. Well, our team won. You're right.
Yeah. He wasn't paying attention.
Obvious, no.
But he was drunk he was pretty Tory fan out by the end of it, I reckon.
Was he?
He was off his rocker. Swearing like a trooper.
Once we got the results. And I'm sort of aware I didn't want to be Tory farmhood, and fortunately I had my makeup on, so that was
we all knew who you were, Judith.
We all knew who I was, thankfully. But honestly, I just thought, look, Simon, have a laugh at yourself, because we were all joking not only at ourselves but at each other, and as well as talking about some of those issues about how it is important for media to actually do their job.
Look, to me, not the debate or our brilliant arguments, Judith, and I'm sure Brooke agrees with that assessment,
Yep.
The downstream of this debate is the proof of the moot, is that you cannot have a charity debate without it then being reported in a media that is looking to sow division as something that requires outrage and, of course, apologies to certain communities. The coverage was a parody of itself in some ways, Brooke.
Oh, look, I slightly disagree. Look, I think Simon Wilson was brought along because he likes to be outraged by these things. You know, he was actually there as a journalist to report the debate, and everybody knew that he was going to write it up with this particular angle.
Yeah.
It would have been really interesting to have somebody who wasn't Simon Wilson there as a journalist to write an article and see what their perspective may have been on it.
Yeah.
It would have been quite interesting.
All right, look, let's move on because I'm getting lots of texts saying, from Simon Wilson. But let's talk just because it segues well. Tory whānau last Friday goes out, has a few, had a good day at work, obviously, forgets to pay her bill. And I'm going to say, Judith, all of that is forgivable in the New Zealand context until you say, do you know who I am?
That's right. I've never felt the need to tell anyone, ask anyone that, because I've always known who I am, Sean. And I think that's the point, isn't it, is that sometimes people don't know who you are, in which case they might ask you, what's your name, please? So you give them your name. You don't say, I'm too important to have a name. I mean, she's not the Queen. But I think we know that the other excuse of she didn't have her makeup on, therefore the people wouldn't have recognised.
Well, no, would have thought she was drunk. She said, I wasn't made up, therefore I might have looked a bit peaky and drunk. Well, I'm not sure. There were so many stories.
No, I think she's might have been better to have come out and said, look, I had a big day out. It was inappropriate. Everyone else was busy working, and I'm sorry about that, but she didn't. And
I must say, look, I'm hardly the first, I'm not going to cast the first stone on it going out and having a few bevies. Brooke, for someone like you, though, and I hate to say it, the journey you're on, you're probably going to be, if you like, at risk of this more often now in the future. Do you think the sin is...
Are you accusing me of being a heavy drinker, Sean?
No. What I'm saying is that when you go out in public from now on, and as your public profile and your recognition grows, and I am now acutely aware of this, I'll go to places and people will be talking behind my back, so look at me. I've been to restaurants where people have whipped out their phones and literally tried to record conversations I've been having with people, private conversations. And it is weird. And to be honest, I have, believe it or not, become far more like a hermit and reticent about socialising, except in very safe environments, than I used to be. So you're going to get this. You're going to get, was she drunk? What was she saying? What time she was out? But once again, I say, Brooke, I don't think Kiwis mind that. I do think they mind people, if you like, getting above their station and saying, don't you know who I am?
Oh, absolutely. Look, I don't care whether any politician, whether you're central government or local council, like a few drinks on a Friday night or a Saturday. I think it's important that we think politicians still have personal lives and are human. I don't want to see us become such wowzers that you say, oh, no, you can't possibly go out for a drink. That's so irresponsible. You can't be a good politician then. And that's just not healthy for anybody wanting to join politics, to say give up all of your life to become a public servant. What I think is really important here is, a lot of this vitriol about Tory whānau and Wellington, I think it's really wanting the mayor to actually do the job of being mayor. And I don't think people would care so much if you had a couple of boozy nights. If you actually made sure that the pipes weren't leaking in Wellington and you're spending money responsibly on things rather than trying to figure out whether Wellington Council should become a sister city with a Palestinian state, which is what they decided to do last week. Just get back to basics of council, and that's the same with government. Do the job of being a politician, looking after taxpayers' money wisely. Have a few drinks on the weekend if you'd like to too. We are all human. And
don't disappear up your own foo-foo valve is the other important thing. And look, I'm not sure, knowing Tory, that that's exactly what was happening, but yeah. Okay, so let's say that's a storm in a teacup. Let's talk about some other big issues this week. Look, a policy that got lots of coverage from the Drongo media was the Greens policy, which of course will never be implemented because Labor says they're not interested in it. The rent control policy, the idea that a government should intervene in the rental market. Brooke, are you renting? Or are you on your own home?
No, I own a home, but I do rent when I'm down in Wellington for my parliamentary role.
Okay. Do you own rental properties?
I do not.
Okay. Have you ever rented, Judith?
Yes, I have, and over the years, but I am also someone who owns their own property. But this nonsense, all it's going to do is to drive more people away from being landlords. It will make it harder and harder for those who find it more difficult to get rental accommodation to get it. And it's a typical Green, sort of almost Ardurnian type dystopia, really, where they're sitting around saying, how can I possibly, what is the vision I want? Well, this is the outcome I want, therefore I'll just legislate for it. They have no idea about people's ability to shift capital. And it might work in post-war Berlin for a few years, but it's not the sort of thing that's going to work here.
It strikes me also, though, it is a specific demographic. That policy, the idea of that policy has a demographic appeal, and that is young New Zealanders. That is where the Greens are targeting their efforts to improve their political fortunes.
Well, many young New Zealanders are still, renting from mum and dad or living with mum and dad because they can't afford to get a house. And some of the Green and Labour Party policies are behind them not being able to. And if we look at the wastage in government and the inflation from government that is driving up the mortgage costs, they're just making it harder and harder for those same people to do what Brooke and I did, which was to get our first house.
I must say also, it strikes me the market is taking care of a certain extent of like the first, it used to be a first home buyer crisis. We've had, Brooke, a 10% in the last year, I think, reduction in the cost of buying a home in New Zealand. That's actually the market doing its thing, isn't it?
Yeah, but you've still got an awful lot of government that is making it hard to buy a home. Of course, the market for house prices is going to take swings and roundabouts, but the government is pushing up house prices. When you've got huge amounts of government spending and you're not actually producing anything more, it increases the cost of everything. We've seen that go up across the board everywhere. But if you look just at that rental market, the limitation for interest deductibility this year alone puts an average cost of $6,000 on a landlord. That's another $120 a week for a renter if that landlord can't suck up the costs, which we know for a lot of landlords.
They won't. They're going to share it to some extent, and I hate to say it, a lot of people will be passing straight on to the
That's
tenant.
exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly right. And look, if you look at this Green Party policy about rent controls, I used to be one of these people that did support the Greens back in the day before I studied economics, and it's for the simple reason. They say a lot of really good things that sound really nice, but the policies don't actually work, and we've got to stress that to people. Yeah, if you're a young renter and somebody says, we're not going to make your rent go up by more than 3% a year, of course that sounds good. But if you look at the policy and the effect of it, it means fewer landlords willing to rent out properties, and before you know it, you've got a huge shortage of homes.
Oh, but then the state can
the
state can intervene and provide, and we can all live in the tower block and go down to the bread queue for our bread in the evenings, can't we?
It just doesn't work. So it's all about vote buying for young New Zealanders who want an ideal society, but we've got to actually live in reality and look at what the effects of these policies will be.
Which is far from ideal.
I think the Greens must look at those awful estate tower blocks in London where there's crime-riven everything, but they must look at those and say, wow, that's where we really want to be. And the reason is, of course, is that after the Blitz in World War II, the British had to do something in terms of housing, but what they've got now are these terrible crime-ridden areas that they've been slowly blowing up when they can and putting in decent housing. And I mean, the Greens and Labour have been absolutely appalling in the housing market. If I look at Kainga Ora, which for your listeners, Sean, is the state housing authority, they have been busy in my electorate buying up existing houses, pushing first home buyers out of the market, paying more than they should, and then they go and stick gang members in them in areas where there haven't
probably,
been
guys, and I didn't have them, probably nylon carpet too.
Oh, well, no, they normally strip the carpet, I think, is the understanding.
Yeah.
They have to strip, and some of them anyway, and from what I hear, that might be a useful thing. But the point is that, yes, they're building new apartments and around the place in Papakura and things, but it's not as though you're necessarily putting always the sort of people who should be, able to cope in apartments, such as elderly people or whatever. But when you stick gangs in them, I'm sorry, you're just destroying the whole life and well-being of everybody around them.
Yeah.
Look, for me, I think the issue here is we do actually need to acknowledge there aren't enough homes. That's why renting is so expensive. That's why mortgages are so expensive. There's just not enough homes anywhere. But you've got to get the foundational building blocks right for building more homes. The answer is not to have more kainga ora and the government involved. It's to have good rules so more people can build, and that might mean more apartments, it might mean more standalone, it might mean some build to rent, but you've just got to have more supply. And if you're one of these young renters who's hearing that the Greens Party wants to cut rent for you, you've got to give them another alternative. And the alternative is, hey, did you realise if there are more homes out there, you'd have more landlords competing for you to live in your home, and it's not going to be as expensive. Let's give them an alternative.
Yeah. Look, guys, another issue I want to raise with you, the latest Roy Morgan poll, and it's a few days old now, and gosh, who knows how reliable our polls are, but it does appear, despite the crime rates, despite the issues with housing markets, despite 100 issues, our political landscape in terms of party support doesn't appear to be changing very much. You guys, Brooke, done quite well, 15, maybe 18, maybe 20%. Judith, National and Labour locked on, depending on the poll, about the same mid-30s polls. Nothing much has really changed or happened, and we're 99 days out from an election. Could I ask you both, as campaigning politicians, do you feel like the polls are giving an accurate picture? How much attention do you pay to them? Judith?
Well, I've watched polls over the years, and I think that these polls at the moment have nothing to do with reality. Now, I'm campaigning in and working in a South Auckland seat, Papakura, which is also South and East Auckland, I should say. I find it hard to get round the supermarket these days without being stopped several times to be told by people, you guys have got to win. And these are not people who I know on speaking terms, but they want to come and tell me that. It's like, it's not like we don't want to win, we do. The point is that they're angry, and they're really angry about crime as well as the cost of living. And it's like, house prices. Well, that makes no difference if you've got a big mortgage, It's like, it's just people can't afford to buy the basics now. And then you've got, a lot of people can't. And then you've got crime, and crime is huge. Now, the last time crime was this huge, it was in 2008, when there was a change of government then too. And I think there's going to be a significant groundswell of support for parties who understand that the goal of crime policies or law and order policies should be about keeping New Zealanders safe, who are going about their lawful business in shops and homes and on the street, rather than cuddling up to criminals and saying, let's just cut the prison population. Well, I've got no problem with having really bad, violent, repeat offenders in jail. It's a good place for them. It keeps them away from the rest of us. And unlike most people, I have been in everyone except one of the prisons in New Zealand when I was the minister, and they're not excellently soft and kind and caring places, but they do rehabilitate people, they do put their efforts into it, and they keep them away from law-abiding people.
Yeah.
Frankly, that's a good thing.
Okay, you've managed to segue into your own political campaign speech there. So you're saying you don't quite believe the polls at the moment, Judith?
No, I don't.
Yeah.
Well, look, in the Papakura electorate, not at all. And in fact, everything we are seeing, and I'm sure Brooke will have her views on this too, the cost of living is just enormous for people.
Yeah.
But in the areas where Kāinga Ora has gang members, in the areas where people, have dairies and, which is most of the country, dairies and supermarkets and things, people are so angry that they're being told by Ginny Anderson, who is now the Minister of Police, and Carmel Sepuloni, the Deputy Prime Minister, that they feel safe. Well, people don't feel safe.
Yeah. Brooke, do you believe the polls? Because so many people these days are saying, why is there no movement? Why in 3 or 4 months has nothing changed?
It's hard to believe the polls because nearly every single conversation I have with people, whether it's out door knocking or seeing people outside the supermarkets or talking to people outside the shops at the local areas, everybody is feeling agitated by this government. And Judith's right. For a lot of people, it's a cost of living pressure. I was talking to shop owners yesterday out in Tamaki. They're saying their revenue is really down. This is not just one shop. It's a whole row of shops saying the revenue is down because people aren't coming in for their coffee every week now, or people aren't coming in to get as much alcohol as they used to because they're cutting back on everything they can think of so they can pay their mortgages and they can get by every week. It's really hitting people. But it's not just the cost of living. No one I talk to feels more safe than 5 years ago. Everybody feels less safe. You've got parents who don't send their kids out to get fish and chips anymore. They're afraid of their kids being out on the streets. People are buying.
I'm afraid of a lot of kids out on the
dogs.
street too, Brooke, to be honest.
We've got women who are buying up security dogs because they don't feel safe to be in their own homes alone anymore. They need something to protect them.
Look, guys, I just want to put this to you. If both of you tell me that you think the polls are wrong, they're just not reflecting what's going on. So that either means there's a massive conspiracy amongst polling companies to mislead us, or that people are not telling pollsters their true intentions.
But what I think it is, and I'm not a pollster, but what I think it is people are feeling agitated. They want change, but they're still waiting to know exactly what that change will look like. And we're being out there banging the message about getting real change for ACT, and we're seeing more and more people come across to ACT, which is great because we want to deliver them the real change. And we've put out a lot of our policies. But I think that's just got to sink in over time, and we haven't actually hit the election campaign where people really switch on to what other political parties are offering.
Yeah. I wondered too, Judith, if, a relatively dyed-in-the-wool Labour voter is ever going to tell a third party, a pollster, that they're not going to vote Labour, or if they wait till the sanctity of the polling booth before they tick for someone else, like, say, New Zealand First, because they just they don't want to admit it.
You never know how people are going to vote. And even when they tell you in the doorstep and tell you in a meeting or something they're going to vote some way, you just don't know what's going to happen between then and the election day when they're actually in that polling booth and no one else is watching. And I think also people don't trust giving their information to, maybe putting their information online with these pollsters now, because now it's all like basically web-based, I understand. So it's all people are very wary of those sorts of things. But I think too is that it's amazing the people who are not actually aware that there is an election in October. Come on, every mongrel mob member in Tyrie's been signed up by... Well, it's nice to know that the mongrel mob is activating yet again with the Labour Party person there, and I thought it was staggering. The Electoral Commission, for some reason, felt that they had the time to go and...
Look, once again, I didn't have this on the brief, But there's something fishy there, isn't it? I mean, I don't think Ingrid Leary thought she was going to a meeting of the Country Women's Institute.
I know Ingrid Leary used to be a journalist.
Yes, she did.
So, in fact, a very experienced journalist. And didn't she also run a journalism school, Sean?
I'm not sure.
I think she did, or certainly taught it.
Yeah.
And so she must know. Basic journalism would say, you go to some meeting, electoral commission, they're all either dressed in orange or mufti, and you go in and there's all these patched members of the mongrel mob with saying Zig Heil and stuff. I don't know. I just figure she could have worked that one through.
Brooke, do you believe her excuse? Oh, I thought I was at something else, like a bake-off or a scone cooking competition?
Look, if I walked into a room with people who had gang member patches all over, I'm pretty sure I'd figure out that I walked into the wrong meeting.
Yeah, but you didn't know you were at a Nazi party rally at Tuesday night at HQ, did you?
Well, yeah, no, that's true. I didn't see any insignia that would have given that away, but at least the gangs wear patches, so you actually know these things. Look, I have serious reservations about the gangs actually saying, let's sign people up and let's vote Labour. If that's
I think it's a deliberate strategy, and I think Ingrid Leary's into it up to her eyeballs. And I think they are going around recruiting gang members because they know they'll vote Labour or Green.
It's just another reason for people not to vote Labour and Green. If they're being told that the gangs will vote Labour, that's a better reason for us to vote them out.
Yeah.
We cannot be on the same side as these people.
Do you think we need to know more about that, Judith?
Well, I think we do actually, and I think Ingrid, as an experienced journalist before she became an MP, would have been someone who might have actually wanted to investigate that herself. But she must have had, 20, 30 years experience as a journalist?
Yeah. Well, as I said in the debate, Judith, she couldn't have been there on Tuesday night. She was at a cake stall or something that was actually a patching ceremony for the mongrel mob.
That's right.
Your phone sounds like it's dying, Judith, so we're going to have to go. Lovely to talk to you again. Brooke, thank you for coming on. And I'm sorry you weren't our first choice, but Simon Wilson and Guy Williams said no. I think we were the winners.
You didn't have to tell me that, Sean.
Honesty, transparency. I'm not Drongo Media. I thank you both, ladies, very much indeed for talking with us, and the audience has clearly, by the text, enjoyed it as well. That is Judith Collins, National Party member for Papakura, Brooke van Velden, Deputy Leader of the ACT Party, and campaigning very hard and possibly successfully in the seat of Tamaki.